Got my character and I'm all set.
But Ted.
I've even got the perfect weapon picked out.
But Ted.
This is the character you allow me to play in D&D.
Sorry, Ted. Your cheap Jedi parlor tricks do not work in D&D.
Fine, then let's just talk about stealing from Star Wars in your D&D game.
Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Hey, you won't have to be force sensitive to predict the next Nerdarchy video if you just force push that subscribe button.
This is the notification bell you are looking for.
The purpose of this video is we want to talk about stealing from the Star Wars RPG for Fantasy Flight Games and incorporating some of those mechanics into our D&D game. But before we do, real quick, we want to tell you about our awesome sponsor. Maybe you've heard of them, Hero Forge. They've got an amazing Kickstarter going on right now. Hero Forge 2.0. They are adding color into your minis. That's right. These things look like they've already been painted when they print them and send them out to you. But no, there's no paint involved. They're 3D printing these things in color, multiple colors, color gradients. These things are amazing. Maybe not so much for this guy because he's awesome at painting minis, but I suck at painting minis. I don't even like painting minis. But being able to order a mini that's already been colored and customized and getting the perfect character, man, that's amazing.
Hero Forge 2.0 is, your answer to the, I've got too many unpainted minis. They are fantastic. We've been fortunate enough to actually see a prototype, and it's the premier mini that's on the Hero Forge Kickstarter, the one with the cool, colorful wings. And when I first saw this thing, I thought it was professionally painted. It looks amazing.
You can believe it, because they sent it to Ted. Ted didn't know it was coming, and I had to tell him it was 3D printed, that wasn't a paint job.
It's true. So it is amazing. If you go check out the Kickstarter, link is going to be down in the description. You're going to see exactly what we're talking about. You can see all of the awesome options that are there. And, it just goes on and on. I could talk for this entire length of this video about how great this Kickstarter is. So I'm just going to let you guys, make your decisions. You're going to go and you're going to check that link and you're going to see how awesome it is.
And you're going to see one other thing over there that you might be interested in if you don't play in person, and that is the virtual token maker. That's something unique, new, and different that they're doing over at Hero Forge, so go check that out. All right, so we're going to jump into our video. We're going to look at Star Wars mechanics that we really like and talk about adding them into our D&D game. Now, matter of fact, during the campaign you're running now, you actually wanted to do this, but there was a little bit of a hiccup and a hitch, and we'll get to that part when we kind of get around to that. So let's talk about, some of the mechanics that we like and we want to kind of integrate.
When you make a character using the Fantasy Flight rules, depending upon which book you're making your character out of, determines whether your character has an obligation, a duty, or a morality score. If you're crazy, like myself, you can sometimes make characters that incorporate classes from multiple books, and you would then have a score for each of them, making it very, very problematic for yourself and the DM.
Real quick, just in case people are not familiar with the Star Wars system, it breaks down into Age of Rebellion, the
Edge of the
Empire, and Force and Destiny. And basically, it's, do you want to play like a down and dirty outlaw with Edge of the Empire? Do you want to be part of the Resistance and a rebel with Age of Rebellion?
Or do you want to play with all of the Jedi rules and be part of the Council with Force and Destiny? And again, you can mix and match as you see fit. But when you do, you are going to deal with all of these scores. And the way it works is it is a percentile. And at the beginning of every session, you add up all of the pools for whatever ones are being used, and the DM rolls percentile. If they roll above what you guys have, no problem. If it rolls within that spectrum, one of the characters who has that score, that's for obligation, that means, all right, well, you have a debt that has to be paid, whether it's a financial debt that's being called into question or a favor that is owed or any number of certain factors. Your character could be called into, there's a problem for you tonight based off of what that debt is.
Which, creates some interesting role-playing things. But also, everyone has a score when you start off, like you said. Depending on which game you're playing may determine how you determine that score. But as a player, when you start, you can choose to take on more obligation, duty, or morality to get perks, to start off with a better character, to get either more gear or more experience as well. So we're going to take a look at that, but we're also going to be taking a look at the Force and Destiny pool.
Absolutely. So, those are the mechanics that FFG, Fantasy Flight Games, offers in that Star Wars game. And I think it's really great. I think there's a number of things that D&D could learn from if you were to adapt that in some way, shape, or form.
Now, we did find some areas in D&D where we feel like would match up to these other systems, and they could play off of each other and enhance each other.
So when we look at D&D, specifically if we go to the DMG, page 22 and 23, it talks about renown and piety. Renown tends to go within an organization where you basically are building clout. I've done a lot of cool stuff, and this organization likes me because of it. And I can basically, the higher my score, the better I am, and the more perks and things that I can get out of them. Piety winds up being the same thing, but as opposed to being an organization, it's within a religion, and it has to do with, the gods and goddesses upstairs.
Which is really cool because duty and obligation fit really well into that organization structure of renown. And morality is perfect for basically the religion. So there's definitely some crossover from there, so we can kind of cherry pick those for ideas. Now, another system that's inside of the DMG is the hero point system, which basically is you get so many hero points that you get to use based on your level and different factors. We're not going to use it that way. We're more interested in what it does. And what it does is anytime you make a attack roll, saving throw, ability check, you can add an extra die 6 to that roll by spending a hero point.
Or, if you failed a death saving throw, you can turn that into a success by expending a hero point.
Which is super, super awesome if you happen to fail with a 1. Because then you would then remove your 2 death saves, and have a success instead.
So we're looking at, the Destiny pool, which uses a D12, and it's mixed up of dark side and light side points. It is heavily skewed towards the dark side. 7 of the 12 sides are dark. The other 5 are light. And start of every session, the Destiny pool is created. All the players roll that D12, that Force and Destiny, or that Destiny die, or...
So with the Destiny die, 1 through 6 is going to give you 1 dark side point. A 7 is 2 dark side points. And then 8 through 9 is going to be 1 light side point. And then 10 through 12 is 2 light side points. And then you kind of just add them all up. And the Force and Destiny pool is represented by double-sided tokens. 1 is dark, 1 is light. You would then just take and put in front of the GM, whatever number you came up with. And then the players can be like, oh, I need an advantage on this roll, which... For simplicity's sake, we'll just say it gives them an advantage on the roll, not the D&D term, just some kind of bonus, so that you don't have to fully worry about understanding those rule sets if it's new to you. And then you would just say, I'm using it, and the GM would flip from light to dark, and you would get to use it.
But the DM has the ability to do the exact same thing and gain an advantage on his rolls using the same parameters. And when they use a pool, they switch it from a dark to light. Now, they don't ever have to use any of their points, which does mean it is a limited number when they are out there until the DM starts flipping them back. And I've seen sessions where it's gone back and forth numerous times, and other times where the DM's like, all right, you had 3 points tonight, and I'm not touching them, and end of session, those 3 were all that got used.
I think same could be said for the players as well. They could be like, well, I don't want the DM to roll them against me. Now, going off of this, when we had mentioned earlier that in Ted's new campaign, he wanted to incorporate some rules from Star Wars, right? And the Destiny pool was one of the things. But his sales pitch to the party was kind of weak, because he's like, hey, we can use the Destiny pool and you guys will have extra chances to have advantage, but I'll also get advantage. Oh, but we're still going to do the normal rules for advantage. So it's like we were already getting advantage, from inspiration, So it wasn't really a great sell, but I feel like if you add the action point system
The hero
into it,
points.
or the hero points. Sorry, action points was something from a previous edition. But if you add the hero points, where instead of just getting advantage, you get to add that die 6, or you can pass a death saving throw. That could even be incorporated with advantage, so that's kind of cool. And then at the same time, I like the idea of the dark points being used by the GM to impose the penalty on a player or a bonus to their villains.
So I am now preparing how to formulate this for the next game, because I think the system that we came up with using this whole destiny pool linked to the hero points, I think it's a fantastic idea.
So now the other idea of using giving the players a score and tying it to obligation, duty, or morality, you might want to change the name for your game, but using the concept. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about like the players having these extra role play problems in order to start off with a little bit more gear, or you don't have an XP system in D&D the way you do in Star Wars, where you expend your XP points to build your character. But we could do other things, like there's 2 tiers, right? Well, what if the player is willing to trade some of their score to have to start with an extra skill, or to start with an extra feat, depending on, how you want to do it with your GM. Those are the places that I could see you could give the benefit to a starting character.
So I would even go a little bit farther and, offering up an additional, like a singular +1 to a stat. For those characters who started off with an odd and they want to round it up. And, you could use the caveat that, with the point buy system, you can't buy above a 16. So, like, you could not use that, that starting bonus there to increase a stat higher than that. But, again, that would be up to the DM and what they want to do for their particular game. But I think having all 3 of those as options work well for me, but I would probably put a caveat of, limiting a character to only being able to purchase up to 2 of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, so here's the thing too, like, if you with the point buy, maybe you do allow it to break it and you top it at 18. The only reason why I say that is in 5e, you can't get above a 20 generally anyway. So really all you do is expedite them getting to that 20 in a particular thing a little bit sooner than they might normally get it. So that might be completely broken, but it is kind of a big deal. And also, it also depends on what kind of cost that we want to put on it, and like what kind of things are going to come up in the game, later on, that's going to be a problem for the player and their adventuring party.
So it's going to link back specifically to whether you're looking at obligation or duty, and they are tied to very specific concepts within Age of Rebellion and Edge of the Empire. With Edge of the Empire, you have incurred a debt of some kind, essentially. Whether you owe money, owe a favor, whether you have a problem that is out there that you're either responsible for or you need to eventually solve, you have a complication. Somebody could be coming after you to collect money. Somebody could want to repo your starship. These are all things that definitely add problems, and it happens at the start of a session, and it could be something that you might be able to resolve within 5 minutes, 10 minutes of role-playing. It might result in combats. It could change the entire skew of what that session or episode is, because instead of getting into town and dealing with the things that you really wanted to do, you realize the dude I need to avoid is standing right there in the entryway, and I can't pass him without having to deal with this. I now need to go somewhere else.
Yeah, what about if there's a bad roll that happens at the beginning of the session, and the DM decides that it's going to be called in, and he picks the most inopportune time to do it? Like, you're in a fight, it's close, this is when your obligation gets called in, and the bounty hunter shows up looking to bring you in. Now all of a sudden, there's an extra combatant on the field, and he's fighting against your side.
So that has its own slew of problems, and I'm certain out there, you guys and girls have seen, all of the different Star Wars bounty hunters that are out there and all the different, shows, comic books, and what have you. Bounty hunters can be severe badasses, and they don't care about, the good, the bad. All they care about is the contract that they have, and they got to bring you in alive, dead, sometimes, who knows. And then on the other side of the spectrum, when you look at Age of Rebellion, and we look at the duty mechanic, it is, I was going to say you have an obligation, but no, that's a whole other thing, and I don't want to confuse you. You have a commitment to this organization, and they have the ability to dictate, this is what I need you to do. So whatever organization that you belong to, they could dictate, this is your mission for the evening. This is what you have to do right now. And they might not care about how dangerous or how time sensitive you might have other things going on. So it's usually not as detrimental to your health, but it is detrimental to a timeline if you're dealing with a time sensitive.
Inconvenient. It can be very inconvenient. And the consequence of not doing that is losing face and your credibility within that organization that in theory is important to you.
Yes.
Now, morality is fun because that's like literally the universe is judging you, right? Determining whether you want to tap into the bad side of the universe or the good side of the universe. It determines where you are. And, both have advantages and disadvantages that are going to come up and penalize you. Now, this one might take a little bit of work in your D&D campaign to figure out. I think it is probably closer to piety. And like if you look at the paladin, which would be the easiest one to look at, it's like the difference between being an oath of devotion and an oath breaker paladin. So you kind of, that's like the spectrum. If I were to put it in D&D terms,
makes total sense to me. When I look at the morality score, and again, it's a percentile roll or a percentile number. If you drop below 25%, you have fallen off of the good side, the light side of the Force, and are now a dark side user. You can do things to fix that, but unless you go through a specific ceremony once you have crossed that threshold, even if you get your morality up higher, you are moral but still tapping into the dark side of the Force. It requires, specific actions to be taken to restore that balance within you. So you could literally use that for, clerics and paladins. I think paladins are easier to use than clerics, but, you could literally look at it with anything, and you could have a boon and bane, chart linked to your piety score, and depending upon how pious you are, could be, well, how much is your god or religion favoring you because of it. And if you dip too low, okay, well, maybe you have a failure chance on some of your powers.
I feel like there's tons of cool and interesting ways you can incorporate these into your game. Tons of ways to explore these mechanics. Let us know if you want us to look at other role-playing games, and maybe you have some specific ideas or games you'd like us to look at, and see if we can't cherry pick them for D&D, or maybe we can cherry pick D&D for other games at some point. We can look at that as well. So we're interested in hearing what you have to say down in the comments. Hey, did you not get enough D&D and Star Wars talk? Around here somewhere, you can find a card where we ask the question, what character class is Princess Leia?
If you want to see it at our own Jedi Council, you could support us over on Patreon.
Every month, we create 5e content over on our Patreon for players and DMs alike. We do weekly live chats for our patrons. We also have monthly giveaways that our patrons are automatically entered in, and so much more.
So until next time, stay nerdy.